I have no particular desire to live. I have no particular desire to be killed. It is a matter of indifference to me. I do not think I'm altogether right.
Welcome to the Vale. We are.
Did you forget who we were?
Yeah,
We're the
totally.
Phantom Pals, Nick and Leah.
I was gonna say, welcome to the Vale, where the paranormal is our playground.
There you go.
And I got stumbled. Um, but first of all, this episode is going to be about Albert Fish. This is part 1.
Yep.
But to start, we do have a cocktail.
We do. We have a fun cocktail.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a 3-part series. We're in between seasons right now, from season 2 going on to season 3.
Mhm.
And instead of going a whole month of nothing, I thought it'd be fun to do a series on somebody. And Albert Fish was somebody that I've always wanted to dive deep in. And let's just say I kind of went a little crazy with it. So we have at least 3 parts. I'm going to try to get it all in 3 parts. Hopefully we do. If there's going to have to be a 4th part, then that's what we're going to have to do.
Yep.
But we will give some trigger warnings before you listen to this whole thing. The things that Albert Fish did was pretty horrific.
Okay.
And it includes different things like rape and torture and mutilation and, of course, children. So if that is something that is a little more than you want to listen to, then there's your heads up. Okay.
But before we get into Albert Fish, we're going to do a shot.
We're going to do a shot?
Yeah.
Shot.
So we broke out the skull glasses again. This is a strawberry sundae. These were pre-made shots we saw in the store.
Yeah, they looked fun.
They looked fun. So.
All right. So cheers to my buddy.
Ooh.
Tastes like cough syrup. Let's not do that one.
Okay. Now, we were at the Oddities and Curiosities Expo.
Yes.
Which
is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
It's a traveling thing. Yeah. It's tours. So one of the booths had mystery boxes.
Yeah.
And it said, and some of their other stuff was a little pricier. So just said 4 horror items per box.
Yeah.
For I think it was like $20 maybe.
Yeah.
So we thought, now here's proof it has not been opened yet.
Correct.
We are going to open it here and see what we got. And you get to see our reaction to the items that we got before we dive in. So here we go.
If the box doesn't beat Nick first.
Okay. I didn't see anything yet. Let's grab a hard object. Oh, okay.
Okay, so the first thing we got is coins from the eyes of a corpse. The ferryman's payment for safe passage into the afterlife. So we got that.
That's a cool little decoration.
That is, actually.
Yeah, that would be a cool little decoration to put up. Okay.
Oh, it's one of those dragon things. It's like a little toy.
Oh, perfect for me.
For real.
Oh my gosh. Do we have to have another intervention here?
I did try to have an intervention with Nick for, being in his 40s and still pretending he's like 3. So,
okay.
Little dragon toy.
I don't know how it's a horror item, but okay. It's fun.
Wow.
I could have some fun with that. I'll play with that during the episode.
You would.
The next is a print. Oh, this is a nice 8x10 actually.
Okay, and then we got a print.
So maybe we are going to be transitioning out of this studio in the next month or two.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, and this is perfect for you. Bigfoot fur sample, Oregon 19.
Very cool.
That is totally you.
1971 from Oregon.
Yep. That is kind of cool.
A fur sample. Okay.
It could be from a dog. We don't know.
Right.
It doesn't look very official. It has a little tag on it, but I mean, it's kind of funny.
It's cool.
So,
Very cool stuff to have.
yes, so some fun stuff to have. Maybe every once in a while she's talking, I'll show you the dragon. Just be fun.
You would.
I would. Yeah, I totally would.
So for
So,
this Creeps and Cocktails, we are going to have a cocktail called the Ricky. Now, Albert Fish was born in Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C.'s known drink is the Ricky.
okay.
And there's a little research behind it. So the story is there's an actual Ricky behind the Ricky.
Oh,
19th century lobbyist Colonel Joe Ricky. During a heat wave in the 1880s, Ricky stopped at Shoemaker's Saloon on Capitol Hill for his usual refresher, bourbon and soda over ice. Bartender George Williamson also squeezed in a half a lime, and that was it. About a decade later, bourbon was switched for more summery gin, and the drink became a hit in the DC, where summer can be, pardon the expression, swampy.
okay.
In DC, July is the official Gin Ricky month, and bartenders go crazy switching up the basic recipe. All right, so we're going to have a Ricky.
Okay.
All right.
So is this anything like the song Ricky Don't Lose That Number?
Want, want. Okay, anyway.
Well, you're going to have an intervention again, aren't you?
You really need intervention. Okay, so we have our gin.
Huh?
Maybe if I can open it.
You a man?
You want me to call one? You walked right into that.
Damn. No mercy.
Okay.
Also, as she's doing that, I will be editing the recording we did at
Asher Walton.
Asher Walton and putting that up, accompanying this probably.
Okay.
So,
Club soda.
you need help opening that too?
Again, you need me to call man? Woo!
Ooh.
That almost went all over the place. That would have sucked.
And this is,
All right.
oh, we're good now. There
Now,
you
when we
go.
got this at the store yesterday, Nick did drop it, but I didn't think it would still be that fuzzy a day later.
So we're probably going to go through a couple of these during this episode.
Well, we've got 3. Now, this is a longer episode. So we're going to have this drink at least 3 times.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we're going to do our little lemon squeeze.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, I think that paper thing is in there. Do you need a man again?
Well, I do need a kid
Oh.
with kid hands. Try to get the tip off of this. We can get Albert Fish over here. He takes the tip off of things. He's having issues with it too, so I'm not the only one. There's like a paper underneath, so you gotta get the top off.
There. No, there isn't a paper underneath.
Well, then we broke it.
Okay.
Okay. Really?
I thought okay.
So,
We broke it. It's all good.
lemon juice all over Leah.
Well, smell limey. Lemon limey. We're good.
Okay. Well, here is our Ricky.
Now I know why your paper towel's there.
A Ricky for you
Okay.
and a Ricky for me.
All right. So now,
So we're going to say cheers,
yep.
and we'll have a drink while we discuss Mr. Fish. Cheers.
Okay.
It's not a bad drink.
No, it's not bad. It's drinkable.
I would have that on a cool day.
Yeah, I'd make that.
Okay, so something to make if you're needing a refreshing drink during the summer. I can see how that worked.
Yeah.
I would put I'd probably put like lime slices in it.
Yeah. Maybe next time we'll have to have some lime
Yeah.
in it. All right. So
All right.
first, let's talk about some of your sources.
Okay, so one of my sources, Nick knew how much I really enjoy reading books, and he got me a book called Deranged: The Shocking True Story of America's Fetish Killer.
Oh, let me fix that.
Oh, you went to the wrong
there we
one.
go. It happens.
By Harold Sketcher. Sketcher, is it?
Yeah.
Sketcher?
Yeah, something like that. He also did one on Ed Gein. He did one on H.H. Holmes.
Yeah, yep. So I got a lot of my information from this book, as well as a book that we just picked up last week. That's called Albert Fish in His Own Words.
And I will pop that one up now. And we actually got at the Curiosities and Odysseys.
Oddities, yeah.
Oddities.
And that's by John Borowski,
Um,
who graciously actually signed the book for me. So I'm keeping it. It's mine.
what did he put in there?
He actually put, once I find it again,
I thought it was kind of funny.
to Leah, what's for dinner? So now that we have that, let's kind of move on and discuss Mr. Hamilton.
Okay.
And I call him Mr. Hamilton because he was born as Hamilton Howard Fish.
Oh, okay.
All right. His name was not Albert.
Oh, so some of those pictures that said Hamilton
Sure.
were him. Okay.
Right. So he was born on May 19th, 1870 in Washington, D.C. And he died January 16th in 1936 in Sing Sing prison. His parents were Randall and Ellen Fish.
Okay.
So Hamilton Howard Fish was known for being one of the most violent pedophiles, child killers, and cannibals of all time. After his capture, he was admitted to molesting more than 400 children, torturing and killing several of them, though it wasn't known if his statement was true. He was also known as the Gray Man, the Werewolf of Wisteria, the Brooklyn Vampire, the Moon Maniac, and the Boogeyman. Okay.
All right.
So Fish was a small gentleman who appeared gentle-looking, not gentleman, gentle-looking man who appeared kind and trusting.
Okay.
Yet once alone with victims, the monster inside him unleashed, a monster so perverse and cruel that his crimes seemed unbelievable. He eventually was executed and, according to rumors, turned his execution into a fantasy of pleasure. We'll kind of dive into that later.
Okay.
So Hamilton Fish was born 5/19/1870 in Washington, D.C. to his parents Ellen and Randall Fish. He was stated to have actually hated his name due to his kids calling other kids at a school, calling him ham and eggs.
Oh, okay.
So they made fun of his name. He hated it.
We have a picture of him as a young kid too, right?
We do.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. Okay.
So once upon a time, cute.
Yeah. So now, where were we?
So he hated being called ham and eggs.
Okay.
And he started going by the name of Albert when he was 15 years old.
Oh, for Hamilton. I got it. Okay.
Ham and eggs, Hamilton? Yep. Yeah. Boy,
Yeah.
that took you a minute.
Yeah, it did. It did. It took me a minute.
A story, he said, he chose to go by this name because his parents lost a son in infancy named Albert.
Huh.
So out of whatever happiness, cheerfulness, memory, he decided to go by Albert.
Okay.
So his father, Randall, I would say first, not much is known about the first few years of Albert's life,
Okay.
but that didn't last too long. His father, Albert, his father, Randall, was a Potomac, why can't I say it? Potomac riverboat captain, was 75 years old when Albert was born. So,
Okay.
much older guy. His mother, Ellen, had documented in some resources was stated to have suffered with auditory and visual hallucinations,
Hmm.
though we don't know if this is for certain.
Okay.
It really, I think it depends on the source, because I've read a few sources where it said like they were perfectly fine,
Okay.
and other sources where it says mom had some issues.
Okay.
But that doesn't end there. Um, Mental illness ran in the family. At least 7 family members, including an uncle and half siblings, have been documented as suffering from different forms of mental illness.
Okay.
2 family members died in asylums. When Albert was 5, his father passed away. Now we know much in the 1870s when this was, so about 1875 when
Mm-hmm.
his father died. Um, he didn't have, or I should say, mother
Mm-hmm.
Ellen, didn't have a whole lot of resources,
Okay.
and she had children to raise. Obviously, the father was the one that was taking care of the income for the family. Mom, in a destitute state, had to make a very difficult choice.
Okay.
And that choice was that her kids had to go to an orphanage
All
until
right.
she was able to afford them, I guess, is a way of putting it.
Okay.
So Albert entered St. John's Orphanage, where Albert and other children were subject to much abuse. Now, I went into like a dive of St. John's Orphanage. Wow.
Okay. What did
It's
you
like
find out?
historically documented of the horrific things that happened there. It was ran by nurses or nuns.
Nuns. Okay.
And when I think of a nun, I'm thinking, God loving, kind, sweet.
Huh.
Like these nuns beat the crap out of these kids.
From when I think of a nun or a Catholic school where nuns ran
Right.
the school, I do get the image of like if you do something wrong, the ruler getting hit with the ruler,
Mm-hmm.
very disciplinary.
Well, they did a little bit more than just the ruler.
Right. I just get very disciplinary when I think of it.
One of forms of punishment was actually called the shame punishment,
Oh.
where they would strip the child naked and beat or whip them with the class of children watching.
Hmm.
A nun.
Yeah.
There's some stories that I read and kind of did some dives. Now, just so everybody knows, this may have happened in the 1800s. However, in 1990s, there was actually a trial and charges were brought up against archdiocese
Yep.
because of these acts at
Yeah.
St. John's.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not an unknown thing that was happening.
No.
It's not a secret. And survivors who were then much older and even their siblings or their children spoke for them.
Right.
So there was a story where one of the children was walking from one dorm to another outside, and she was being escorted by a nun. And she heard a commotion and looked up and saw a child literally fall out of a window onto the ground in front of her.
Holy cow.
And she had to describe in quite detail when she was testifying the bounce that she saw from the child's body.
Okay. Yeah, that's
And when she looked up, she saw a nun standing at the window as if the child was thrown out.
dang.
She looked at the nun that was escorting her and she said, "Sister." And the sister said, "You have a vivid imagination. We'll have to do something about that."
Okay.
So,
That's yeah.
so there are some pretty crazy things that happen in these orphanages. definitely stories about children getting sick and throwing up and being
Hmm.
forced to eat their
Okay.
vomit.
Hmm.
So he was not in the best situation. Um, I'm just gonna move.
Oh yeah.
You took my mouse away
I'm
from me.
sorry. I'm sorry that I took the mouse away.
All right. So it was here that these experiences that later Albert would explain began to arouse him sexually. He enjoyed watching others in pain as well as pain being inflicted upon him.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So later in life, Albert began to indulge in picarism. Um, and we'll discuss a little bit more about picarism later. And then, of course, there's that famous x ray online that many people have probably seen of the needles inside of Albert fish that were inserted in there by him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have to put that picture up eventually.
Yeah. Well, when we go into like part 2 or 3, when I discuss the
Hmm.
trial and eventual execution, we'll talk about how those needles sort of interrupted the execution a bit. But we'll get
Hmm.
into that.
Okay.
All right.
Interrupted. Okay.
Okay.
No, well, I'm not. No, I'm not judging there.
All right. Albert remained in the orphanage till he was 9 years old. So he was there for 4 years. So 4 years of abuse.
Okay.
It's like a whole high school lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, they do say high school is traumatizing.
True. True. And if you think about it, Albert was there when he was about 5 to 9, which is still a very formative time in an adolescent development.
Yes, it is.
They always say like the birth to 3 is the most important time for a brain,
Okay.
and it is very formative. But when you're in that school age of 5 to 9, you're still forming portions of your brain, obviously, until you're at
Right.
least 26 years old. But now you're taking on different emotions, different feelings of being
Mm-hmm.
human, and what's normal, what's not normal, what to expect. And this can really hit the frontal lobe portion of your brain when it comes to your feelings
Right.
and how you see things
Mm-hmm.
in regular life. And so during 5 to 9, he was beaten on pretty more likely a lot versus not. Um, and there was also other rumors and things kind of said in different resources that it wasn't just the nuns that were beating him; it was
Okay.
other kids as well.
Okay.
When he was 9, his mother gained employment with the state and was able to gain back custody of her kids.
Okay.
So Albert came home.
Okay.
He came back home to his mom, but he was a very different boy.
Well,
No
I would
longer,
imagine.
yeah, no longer a cute little toddler, but a little bit more grown up, 9 years old, and with
Hmm.
problems.
You know, toddlers are lucky they're cute with some of the stuff they do.
Yeah, right. Very true. Um, so he was actually known to wet the bed until he was about 11 years old. So when he
Okay.
came home, he had a habit of wetting the bed. Um, Now, if you look at that in the triad of psychopath, they
Okay.
always say like wetting the bed is in there as well.
Oh.
But in this circumstance, and we all know that the triad as well is being questioned
Mm-hmm.
as to validity and credibility of it. But I would say that wetting the bed was likely a trauma response from the
Probably.
years of abuse and possibly molestation, because there were a number of nuns there by the testimony in 1996 and 1999 when these went to court, that nuns were molesting the boys as well.
The nuns,
The
not the
nuns,
priest.
not the priests, the nuns.
Interesting.
Yep,
Never. I've heard of the priest scandals and stuff, but not the nun ones.
the nuns. So it is very well known that in sexual abuse cases, um, children would and teenagers would begin to wet the bed as a trauma response.
Okay.
So it wouldn't surprise me. that was the reason for it. Should we cancel that?
No, just
Okay.
hit close.
Sorry for the noise. Alrighty.
It's computer noises.
He also suffered from continuous headaches, dizzy spells, and severe stutter which could be the result of a trauma or a fall he had from a cherry tree that caused a concussion. So,
Cherry tree.
yep.
What, did George Washington chop it down?
So he was climbing a cherry tree. It's unknown what age. It was said it was in his early childhood, and he fell and was unconscious for 15 minutes.
Is there anything actually to that? Is that factual? Because like
That
George
is
Washington.
factual.
Okay.
That is factual. So he did fall. He was out for 15 minutes and had a concussion. And from that time, he was stuck with headaches and dizzy spells. He had a stutter.
Okay.
So right now, we're looking at a man that had significant trauma as a child.
Yep.
Possible molestation, abuse, witnessed other abuse, had possibly a brain injury. So out for 15 minutes, obviously some sort of brain injury took place.
Okay.
Needed stitches on his forehead after that fall. So to me, when you need stitches on the forehead and you're out for that long, something in your frontal lobe was affected, which the frontal lobe is in control of a lot. It's in control of regulating emotions. It's in control of language, your math abilities, executive function, knowing right and wrong. So there's a lot to your frontal lobe. So if that is injured at any point, it can be a personality change.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So Albert, it was reported in two different places. So one place reported that Albert gained a friendship with another local boy where he learned to enjoy the act of eating feces and drinking urine. Another resource says that when he came home from the orphanage, he was already partaking in such things.
That is kind of...
Which I would believe, because if they're making you eat your own vomit, I'm sure they were probably doing that as well.
Yeah.
So Albert graduated from public school when he was 15, and by 17 working as a house painter. And he had other odd jobs like grocery stores and stuff like that. While even in his teen years, he enjoyed inflicting pain upon himself. He constructed a cat of nine tails and a, DIY, do it yourself, board with nails in it to use on himself.
DIY, huh?
DIY. DIY torture chamber.
Okay.
His picarism is used in some types of sexual acts of bondage with consenting adults. Picarism is the enjoyment of stabbing other people.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Haven't tried it.
Thank you for that. But picarism is used in bondage and sexual acts with consenting adults, where they would like pinprick each other with needles.
All right.
Not something I know of anybody into, but I also don't ask people about their sexual preferences. So it's just something that can be done.
Okay.
Now, it gets very blurry with consenting adults as well, because can you imagine like pinpricking each other and then just keep... Okay, anyway, we're going to pretend I didn't do that.
I'm a little afraid of you.
Picarism is done that gives a sense of satisfaction of driving the sharp objects into somebody, but rarely your own body. It's usually associated with killers who use it as stabbing others.
Oh, okay.
So if you are involved in murders or known to be a serial killer and you enjoyed stabbing, that could be a form of picarism.
Okay.
They gain sexual gratification from hearing pain and screams of someone else. Act of torture and murder was something Albert actually enjoyed. Also in his teens, he would watch other boys undress in bathhouses and receive sexual gratification from this. Now, in a normal person, the societal barrier and moral standards would stop us from doing something like this.
Yes.
Not appropriate. In a serial killer, they will continue to cross these types of barriers and shed that moral compass that we typically have.
Okay.
These similar acts continue to grow into more serious and vicious acts to others. So the escalation is inevitable without intervention.
Okay.
So he started low, watching other people, getting
Gotcha.
enjoyment out of that. However,
Okay.
it grew and exasperated
Hmm.
because there was no intervention, there was no stopping or
Okay.
even putting any type of therapy in place. Not that they had a whole lot of therapy.
Right. At that time, the asylums were just, if you weren't
Holding
mentally,
places.
yeah, if you weren't mentally healthy, then that's just where they put you. They
So,
didn't really help you.
no. But what was really known about this stuff as well?
Right.
We've learned so much in the years. But we'll discuss one thing that science thought they broke a while ago
Okay.
that now we look at and go, huh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Albert began to answer mail order ads where others would place ads seeking romance or marriage and send responses with obscene letters. So it was like the classifieds back then in local
Okay.
papers.
Or like our Craigslist now.
Right. Or, well, even past Craigslist, like Facebook Marketplace,
Yeah.
something like
Well, the
that.
Facebook Marketplace is getting untrustable now.
Right. So ads were placed to seek these romance and marriages, and he would answer these ads with obscene letters about wanting to be whipped or whip others and
Hmm.
stab with needles and very grotesque.
So not like misconnection, just
No, no,
no,
not
not
a
the
misconnections.
not the misconnections. Like I saw this blonde in the bar at this bar at such and
Right.
such time. Come back to the same. Come back at this time.
Right.
No. Okay.
No, nothing like that.
No.
All right. So he moved on to answer landladies who inquire in the classified ads for rooming spots they have in their boarding houses. He would answer with the name Frank Howard, which is one of his
Hmm.
aliases, saying that he had a developmentally challenged brother or son, and he would like to tell the landlady in detail how the child or son would need to be disciplined. And if he were to live there, would she be okay with such discipline? If he heard back from them, he would go further and ask if he can send someone to demonstrate the discipline to determine if this landlady can handle it. Um, if they agreed, which is odd by this point, but
Yeah. Yeah.
if they agreed, he would show up and attempt to get a landlady to beat him.
Hmm.
Yeah. So in the end, he was just looking for somebody to inflict pain on him.
Okay.
All right. So, okay. Scams kind of ended at that point, and nobody was like moving forward with that. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't like, okay, yeah, I'll do that for you.
No.
So in 1890, at 20 years old, Albert moved to New York City as a painter and was still writing vulgar letters. But this is when life began to escalate and he began to move into molesting young boys.
Oh.
Yep. He would lure kids into the basements of apartments where he was working and assault them.
Okay.
Now, he made it a point to do this to disabled or unfortunately black children because sadly, at this time of history, they were less noticed to be missing or not listened
Mm.
to if they attempted to report it,
Gotcha. Yep.
which is a testament to its time. It's terrible,
Yep.
but it's
That's.
what happened.
Oh yeah.
And
That's.
that's who he targeted. He also frequented brothels, but was there to be beaten and whipped, not so much for any sexual act with a mistress.
Okay.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care what you do at a brothel. If it's consensual behaviors and you're paying for it, go do what you're going to do. Leave the
Right.
kids alone. You're getting your gratification. You're paying for it. It's legal. Well, not really, but you're not hurting anybody else.
Times were different then too.
Yeah, you're
They were a little more
asking to be heard.
common.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in 1898, when Albert reached about 28 years old, believe it or not, he got married.
Oh.
19-year-old woman by the name of Anna Mary Hoffman.
Okay.
And they were reportedly set up to meet by his mother.
Okay. So he must have had some something desirable to pair him with somebody.
Yeah, I guess so. They actually had 6 children together.
Oh,
Imagine your parent being Albert Fish or being married to Albert Fish. Wow, it's crazy.
okay.
So in their marriage, they had Gertrude, Eugene, John, Anna, Henry, and Albert Jr.
Okay.
Now, here's surprise, okay? You would think that a man that has harmed so many other children, in some resources talking over 4 to 500 children in his
Mm-hmm.
time, killing multiple, that he would have been more of an abuser at home, or his children might have been in danger for sexual abuse.
Okay.
Well, the
Mm,
children described Albert as a kind and decent father who worked hard for them. There were no reports of physical or verbal abuse.
that doesn't surprise me because um, he's going outside the home. He's got a double life.
Sure, could have the double life thing going on.
Um, I mean, typically you don't go after your own family.
Right,
Um, they like how many times do you hear someone find out they're married to someone and they're actually a serial killer and they had no idea that
right.
their husband or wife was
Involved in that.
involved in any of
Right,
what's going on.
right. Um, he had grandchildren and would reportedly write letters to his granddaughter and was just very like grandfathery to
Mm-hmm.
her. However, while there was no physical or verbal abuse, the children stated he was weird at times, played weird games, and would want the kids to hit him with things. So imagine as a kid, especially like a toddler,
Mm-hmm.
and your parent is going, "Oh, you can hit me with this," and then you hit them, and it's like a big laugh or whatever. But imagine knowing as an adult that something you did as a game with your dad actually was like sexually gratifying him in some way.
Mm,
It's an ick.
yeah,
It's a huge ick.
that is.
Ick. Okay, and we're gonna move past because I'm just getting ickies. All right, so during the time he was married and had children, he actually attempted to stifle fantasies and work to support his family.
Yeah.
In 1903, he became incarcerated in Sing Sing prison for larceny and petty theft. And then he was in and out of jail for brief times through the years, but usually for lower level crimes.
Okay.
And on release, he was always deemed insane or sane. So nobody ever caught anything.
He was able to fake it really well.
Right. Knew what to say. Kind of like Ed Kemper.
Yeah.
Knew what to say.
Okay.
So eventually, the thirst and need for him to continue to molest boys and be interested in male relationships took the control.
Okay.
He took on what he called lovers, always younger boys, typically around the age of 19.
Okay.
And one of them took Albert to a waxworks museum.
Hmm.
Before Madame Tussauds wax wonders and stuff like that,
Okay.
there was like a wax world
I mean,
museum.
there was different forms of entertainment then too,
Sure.
than we have. Like,
Right. So a little outing for him and his 19-year-old male lover.
nice.
Not a problem. All
No.
right. It was at this place that they actually saw um, a wax dissection of a penis.
Oh. Okay.
um, Most sane people would look at it and go either medically interested, like clinically
Yeah.
interested, and others would go, okay, great, and like move on. He looked at it and was like, I want to do this. He became immediately
Oh.
intrigued and fascinated and fantasizing. I can't talk today. To
Okay.
do this to somebody, he became interested in castration. So, not a typical mind. I don't think many people would look at that and go, "Let me
Uh,
try." Like,
no. No, I'm glad I don't know him.
well, you're not 19 anymore, so you may not have been of interest.
Okay. Okay.
I feel like you're plotting.
I'm not plotting anything.
Oh, okay.
I would never do that to you.
Uh-huh.
Nope.
Right, so he was in a relationship, I should say in Willington, Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
In 1910, he performed the mutilization that he was he was fascinated with.
Okay.
So he was in a relationship with a 19-year-old boy named Thomas Keaton. Some reports stated that Thomas was disabled or developmentally challenged and maybe unwilling to be in this relationship, but was bullied and threatened into it.
Okay.
Not all of Albert's lovers were willing to be part of the loving relationship.
Okay.
Albert recalled abducting Thomas at one point and taking him to an abandoned building where he kept Thomas bound for 2 weeks, torturing him daily. At the end of the 2 weeks, Albert chained Thomas up and bisected his penis while Thomas was still alive. Albert was quoted saying, "I shall never forget his screams or the look he gave me."
Okay. Yeah.
You good?
Yeah. That's yeah.
Okay. As long as you're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we able to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Do you want to talk about it at all?
No,
Okay.
we're not gonna go any further into that.
All right.
We're just
We're going to move
move
on.
forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Albert was planning to kill Thomas and dismember him and bring his body parts home to eat, as he was becoming interested in cannibalism.
Okay.
It is undocumented that he was planning to feed his family any human remains. We don't
Okay.
know that. But in some of the conversations that the kids had with law enforcement, they did talk about how their dad liked to eat raw meat and would sometimes offer it to them,
Okay.
which I still think is a form of abuse in one way or another. But I mean, not really. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know where to go with that. So Albert changed his mind. This is funny. He changed his mind because it was hot during that time.
Okay.
And he was afraid that the meat would go bad and give him some sort of food poisoning.
Mm.
So he could beat himself with a cat of nine tails and beat himself with a board and nails and have others whip him. But, getting the tummy aches, that was a hard pass for him. That was a no-go.
Oh.
Nope, he wasn't going to have all that. So he never killed Thomas, and I don't know if this isn't any worse. However, Thomas now had this dissected penis, so obviously in a lot of pain. Albert poured peroxide onto it, covered it with Vaseline, placed dirty rags around it, gave Thomas a kiss and $10, and allowed him to leave.
Oh.
I don't know what's worse at that point, death or pain.
I'm not giving an opinion on that.
I was looking to you for an opinion.
Both of them are pretty shitty.
Okay. Peroxide.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just move on from that.
All right. So Thomas was actually never heard from again after this.
Not surprisingly.
I would love to know what actually happened to him.
He could have actually passed from that.
Could have. I mean, did he lose his penis? Like, what happened? So, in 1917, Anna abandoned Albert and their 6 kids. She was having an affair, shocker, with a handyman who rented the room in the Fish's house,
Okay.
John Straub.
Oh.
She left one day while Albert was at work, and when he returned from his job, he found Anna gone and his kids were home alone. So she abandoned them all.
Oh.
A few weeks later,
Mother of the Year.
this is even better. A few weeks later, Anna and John returned back to the home and begged Albert for a sort of forgiveness and to allow them to stay there because they couldn't afford to be out on their own.
Oh.
Like then, huh?
Interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
left with another man and came back and begged me to come back with him. And we all just stay in this house as a happy family, huh?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's okay.
So Albert actually allowed Anna to come back, but said John cannot come back into the house. So she snuck him into the attic. And that's where they stayed for a little bit until Albert found out. And then Albert kicked them out, was going to give Anna one last chance and say, you can stay, but he's got to go. And she said no and left with him.
Okay.
So he was nicer than I think many husbands would be at this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that.
I don't think many would.
No.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's not really standing up.
No.
No.
So unfortunately, while Albert and the kids were gone, Anna and John did come back to the home and cleared out all of the furniture, including the
Oof.
kids' beds,
Mm,
and likely sold it for those two to move on.
sounds a little bitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or yeah,
So Albert now is alone as a single father to his 6
I
kids
had nothing.
and had nothing.
Ooh.
This was a turn for Albert to really dive pretty deep in his self mutilation and began to fall deep into religious mania. He began to do weird things in the name of religion, such as running outside naked and screaming because God told him to. He was seen on top of hills saying, I am Jesus Christ, with his arms out on the side. So I am Jesus Christ. Kind
Wow.
of did that. His son found Albert rolled up in a carpet and just laying there, like rolled up like a burrito in a carpet. And he asked his dad what he was doing, and he replied, John the Apostle told me to do this. So now comes the needle pickerism as well.
Okay.
So we already see that Albert is beginning to spiral. Not that he wasn't spiraling before, because it's not like he was doing anything good before. But now, with the abandonment of his wife and just being in this dire straits of having to take care of 6 kids on his own, he didn't
Mhm.
ever really have a stable job. It was always just odd jobs, handyman, painter, stuff like that.
Okay.
He just kind of spiraled even further. Um, then he started doing his self mutilation where he would stick needles into himself. He would place them in the space between the anus and the scrotum and insert needles into his body.
Well.
Okay. He also stuck needles into his testicles and his scrotum, but he had said that that was too painful.
I would imagine.
You gonna try that?
No, I do
Nope.
not want to. Don't be getting any fantasies now.
Oh goodness. He also asked his kids to hit him more often with the paddle, and actually started encouraging his kids' friends to hit him with this homemade panel. So, like, imagine your kid going over to the fish house, and the kid comes home and goes, "Yeah, like Albert Jr.'s dad wanted me to hit him with a paddle and nails." um, you're never going back there again.
Yeah.
I'm going to report this. This is not good.
Do not go there ever again.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes. um, here's kind of another bad one he did though. He would insert a wooden dowel soaked with lighter fluid into his anus and light it.
What? Okay. Why would you do that?
Why did he do any of the gross things
Why?
that he did?
Why? What does that serve?
Had to burn his rectum? I don't know.
I mean, nowadays we just go eat Taco Bell.
Fair.
Huh.
So in 1919, Albert began to randomly stab boys in basements or other locations he can lure them into. like just randomly stab them, lure them into a basement, stab them, walk away.
Okay.
It's not known if he killed anyone, highly suspected and assumed that this likely led to multiple deaths.
Right.
But reports were not made because, again, he was choosing victims to lure into places that would not be looked for or investigated by police.
Gotcha.
Sadly, victims have remained nameless, and unlikely that Albert even knew who they were or how many.
Mm.
So, July 11th, 1924, a young girl named Beatrice Keel, who was 8 years old at the time, was playing in front of her Staten Island farm home. Albert was very good at talking to children.
Okay.
He had that charming effect. He was that old grandpa looking, so
Mm-hmm.
very innocent looking. You wouldn't think anything of him if you saw him other than he looked odd. But
Okay.
he didn't look scary
Okay.
at this point. He did coming up here.
Okay.
But he gained their trust.
Right.
He was very good at talking to children and gaining their trust. Very cunning.
Okay.
He walked up to this little girl, Beatrice, and they began to talk. He offered her money to help him find rhubarb in the nearby field, and she agreed, and he took her by the hand and began to lead her away from the home. Her mother, however, saw this and was able to chase Robert off using a
Okay.
broom.
Okay.
Like, scared him off. But he didn't get the hint because he came back that night and snuck into the barn and was found sleeping in the barn by Beatrice's dad, since they were pretty much on high alert after this happened.
Right.
And he beat the crap out of Albert.
I mean, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That would probably be a response.
Yeah. So, in an effort to continue his hunt for children, Albert found a few boys playing outside near his home. He had
Okay.
asked them if they wanted to come in for lunch. Again, this was a very different time.
Yes, it is.
Neighbors were neighborly. People knew each other. It just wasn't uncommon to see kids outside playing without like much supervision.
Right.
It just was a thing. So they were playing outside. He asked if they wanted to have lunch. They were like, yeah, let's go have some lunch. They went inside the home.
Okay.
While the kids were roughhousing inside Albert's room, they ended up like flipping up the mattress. And the
Okay.
kids were able to see tools that later Albert described as his implements of hell.
Okay.
So he had gathered tools that he used to torture and kill children and named them the implements of hell, which were a butcher knife, a handsaw, and a meat cleaver. So he had them under his mattress. The boys saw this and luckily immediately ran out of the house.
Okay. So they
ran.
So they were smart.
Yeah. So Albert felt that he was failing at this mission of killing and eating a child, which
Okay.
he got into for some reason, and bizarre behaviors and self-mutilation became even more increased.
Okay.
Until now in 1924.
Okay.
So this is where we'll talk about his first actual murder
Okay.
that we know of.
Okay.
I would say the first actual one that made headlines and he confessed to later.
Okay.
Excuse me. So, July 14th, 1924, around 2 p.m. on Staten Island, Anna McDonald was watching her kids, 8-year-old son Francis and 5-year-old Albert McDonald. She
Okay.
saw what she described as a gray man with a gray suit and a gray mustache come walking down the street in her direction.
Okay.
Now, Albert would have been mid-50s at this time. He was acting bizarre, according to Anna. He was opening and closing his hands and kind of wringing them around. She stated in some resources that he was like mumbling to himself.
Okay.
Two police dogs that belonged to the neighbor began to bark and actually like leap at him. They were called off by the neighbor. At this point, Anna said that the man looked at Anna, tipped his hat to her, and continued to walk, disappearing down the street.
Okay.
So, just a moment of time that she just remembered vividly was weird man kind of doing this little thing with his hands,
Mm-hmm.
enough for her to notice and feel very uncomfortable.
Okay.
He looks at her, kind of does a hey, and tips his hat and keeps going.
Okay. So.
It's scary to know that because a few hours later, Francis and Albert were playing with other neighborhood kids by this point, a little bit further down the street. And the same man appeared, asking the boys to come over to him. Now, only 8-year-old Francis came over to him, and he was carrying his favorite ball that had little circus animals on it. The other boys went back to playing, but when Albert turned to look at his brother just a minute later, Francis was nowhere to be seen.
Okay, and we have a picture of Francis.
Yeah.
So.
Cute little boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he was nowhere to be seen after just about a minute of time.
Okay.
So a neighbor, Jacob Stern, who was the last person to see Francis, saw Francis at 4:30 entering the woods with an older man. He described him as frail, older, gray hair, gray mustache, a hat.
So he was older when he started doing this.
He was mid-50s.
Okay.
Now, he looked much older. Now, we look at people in their mid-50s now and go, that doesn't look old at all.
Okay.
But imagine the beginning life of trauma that Albert had.
Right.
Then all of these like weird, sadistic things in his head, the things that he did.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that evil and that type of these thoughts would age the crap out of you.
Yes.
He looked so much older. It's like the pictures I've seen of Albert Fish, minus like maybe that childhood one.
Okay.
He always looked old.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he was born old. He just always looked old.
Okay, kind of. This would have been. Where is it? So that, not like that.
That was like his younger years.
Okay.
Yep. But later on, we'll have more pictures in part 2 and 3 of what he looked like at arrest and his older pictures.
Starting to get a little more handy with the software.
You're rocking it.
So we're starting to get more up there.
Okay. So anyway, he said he saw them leading this older man leading Francis into the woods. However, he didn't stop anything because these woods led to a park that the kids played at all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Jacob reported that there wasn't a sense of a problem. Both appeared to be walking normally. And he knew Jacob and the McDonald family, but not like extended family members.
Okay.
So in his mind, it could have been a grandfather taking him to the park or something.
Okay.
There was nothing abnormal for him to say, wait, what is going on?
Okay.
It was more of just he saw it right in front of him. He took note of it. Excuse me. Now, when Francis didn't return home, his parents began looking for him. His father, Albert, another Albert, Albert McDonald Sr., was a police officer in Manhattan.
Okay.
The search party began in the neighborhood of Port Richmond. Town began to look for Francis. Little Albert began to describe the gray man that approached them, and here's where the name Gray Man derived from.
Okay.
And Anna, of course, described him the same way, gray. Just everything about him seemed gray.
Okay.
The gray, palish face, the mustache, the hair, even his clothing was gray, his hat.
All right.
So he was just named the Gray Man. The following day, the search party of police, neighbors, and Boy Scouts were out looking for Francis, and unfortunately, it was 3 boys from the Boy Scouts, which I didn't know Boy Scouts joined in missing people. So maybe they did back then.
Maybe they did back then, yeah, because, I mean, now your Boy Scouts back then is nothing like any of it is now.
Right. So 3 Boy Scouts ended up tripping over Francis's body. When they found him, Francis' clothing from the waist down was violently torn from his body. He was strangled by his own suspenders so aggressively that the skin was actually cut by the suspenders.
Mm.
And he had bruises all over his body.
Hmm.
So Albert Sr., dad, was transferred from Manhattan to the Staten Island police force to investigate the crime of his murdered son,
Hmm.
which I think now they would say that's like a conflict of interest. They wouldn't let you investigate something
No.
like that, but at that time they let him.
I mean, the rules are different now, probably too.
Right.
Lessons learned, and
Yeah. So dad was quoted saying, "If I find the killer, I will turn him right over to Captain Van Wager, who was the lead at this time. I'll not harm a hair on his head. I want to see him punished, but the law must take its course."
and that's probably why they let him.
Do that. Bigger man than me.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think I would have been that nice.
Not at all. I'm
No.
sorry, what did you do to my kid?
Yep.
If I find you, I will join you in jail because you'll probably be dead.
Yeah.
What parent wouldn't feel that way, though?
Right.
That's kind of crazy. So the news went wild, and articles, media pushed the idea very heavy that this was done by a young man due to the strength that was needed to cause such damage to the body. And an article reported medical experts agree that the murderer was a strong man, not a senile degenerate.
Okay.
So even though there were numbers of reports of people seeing the gray man, describing him as older,
Okay.
they were saying, no, there's no way an older man did this.
All right.
So kind of ignoring the people that actually saw this man.
Right.
An autopsy was conducted by the assistant medical examiner, Dr. George Moore. He found that Francis died by strangulation and internal hemorrhage.
Mm.
He was severely beaten and missing flesh from his hamstring. Gross. This led Dr. Moore to report that due to the brutality of this crime, it had to have been done by a strong young man or maybe two. So that led police like a whole different direction.
It does, yeah.
Interestingly enough, they also found undigested raisins in his stomach. The family did not, or the family stated that he didn't have raisins in the home, and the kids that he was with that day said that they didn't eat raisins. So they're looking at the fact that he probably was lured by the man by raisins.
Okay. Was that candy back then?
Probably. It seems like it. Albert Jr., the younger brother, also said that the gray man gave him a silver coin.
Okay.
So now they're on the hunt for suspects. And it gets wild. Media, we even see this today where media takes things to a whole different level and places people in like different paths and avenues.
Right.
So there was two gentlemen, Clyde Patterson and Jacob Galty, who worked at a nearby hospital near the woods Francis was found. They were both described as degenerates. Okay. So whatever that word was in the 1800s or early 1900s.
Gotcha.
Clyde was 42. I'm sorry. Yeah, Clyde was 42 and Jacob was 18. They were among some of the men to tell police about a place in the woods named as the Rattlesnake's Nest, and that's where the body was found.
Okay.
They reported that weirdos or perverts would go down to the rattlesnake's nest of the woods to do things.
Okay.
Well, then they became suspect for knowing this information.
Isn't that how it always goes? You help, yet you're a suspect?
Yeah. Because you knew something. The police brought in Jacob Stern, again the neighbor, to take a look at Clyde, and Jacob again reported to them that the man that he saw was an old man, grizzly and gray.
Okay.
Clyde was not him.
No.
The police turned around and reported to media that they are discounting Jacob's description because they feel that there's no way this was an older man that did this. So they look at like a witness who saw Francis with somebody and said, we're not going to listen to your description because it makes no sense.
It didn't fit their narrative.
No. So police still felt that the suspect would have been in the prime of his life and discounted all descriptions of the older man that both Anna and Albert Jr., the kid who saw him,
Mm-hmm.
and Jacob gave. Jacob Herman reported he saw a body in the woods himself when he escaped from a nearby insane asylum.
Okay.
So he was an escaped inmate who was running in the woods.
So obviously he probably did it then.
Well, he was questioned. However,
Then was he returned?
maybe I'm assuming.
Okay.
So Jacob reported that he actually saw the body when he was on the run. He touched the body and said that it felt like putty. He got scared and ran.
Okay. Why?
Why touch it? Like, okay,
Okay.
just a weird instance that happened
I
here.
mean, he at least told them that he touched it, so if they find prints
I guess so.
or evidence that he was there.
Yeah. Well, he was eliminated from the suspect list because it was verified that he was still an inpatient at the time of the murder.
Okay, so he hadn't escaped yet.
He had not escaped at the time of the murder. He escaped later. Like
Okay.
either later that night or early the next morning,
Okay.
the day that he was found.
Sure. We'll go with that.
Yep. Then the police brought in a man named Melvin Ware, 33-year-old dishwasher, who actually confessed. He admitted that he did the murder.
Why would he admit that he did the...
This is interesting. He was unable to provide any details. It was just he confessed that he did it.
He just wanted credit for it?
And he even had a rubber ball that sort of matched the description of the little ball that Francis had.
Oh. Okay.
And then even Anna, the mom, came in and said, yeah, that was her kid's ball.
Okay.
And he admitted it, did the confession, and he appeared with scratches on his face. Okay. So they're all thinking, we got the guy. We got this younger guy, 33 years old. He's admitting he did it. He had an object of Francis's. We got him.
Yep.
He recanted his confession the next day.
Of course he did.
The reason he recanted is in the end, he was actually being sought after for a assault of a 14-year-old boy.
Oh, all right.
So he thought that if he would turn himself in and admit to this murder, that he would be extradited and charged with murder, found out that he didn't do it, be released, and then the warrant for assaulting the 14-year-old boy would just be forgotten.
It was a diversion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's...
I gotcha. Diversion.
Because that happens. We just forget about all the charges, just focus on one.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. That happens. What?
Oh, you didn't do that. Okay.
Right.
Oh.
We forgot about that first charge, yeah.
Mm.
So Jacob Stern again stated that this was not the man he saw.
Well, I mean, record keeping then might not have been as good as it is now.
Right.
Now it's all electronical, so
you're not getting away.
You're not getting away now if you were charged with something. They make sure you get tried.
So again, Jacob was like, this still ain't the guy. Why do you guys keep asking me if you're not going to listen to me? Mm-hmm. So he's getting frustrated. Media is coming out with so much information. And at this time, there wasn't any like fact checking. They were just sending stuff out without even verification.
Okay, so the papers kind of had free reign.
Yeah.
And did whatever they wanted.
Yeah. And they had misinformation out there that was later retracted, and then more misinformation.
Gotcha.
And then they had all these people come in. They had suspects, and then they were let go.
Gotcha.
People are getting mad.
Yeah, I would say.
So the general population was just as angry about this case because here on this little area of Staten Island, we have a murdered child who was a child of a police officer.
Yep.
And a child of a family that was very well liked in their area. And they felt like the police were messing things up. Media was messing things up. It was time to take justice into their own hands. So...
Batman style?
Batman style. So they had a vigilante mob that was formed. And they were looking for themselves.
Okay. Well, Batman works alone, but okay.
Yes. And the problem is that the newspaper was honed in on drifters and homeless people, claiming that the murder had to be from that type of community.
Okay.
So anybody that was either homeless or was in the midst of traveling
Yeah.
was a target to this group.
Okay, but okay.
Right. So then we got to John Iskorsky. This was so sad. He was staying briefly in an abandoned shack when a teenager came across him and felt, this is the guy they want. He ran into a gas station and told the owner, who came back to the shack with the teenager, made John get up and forced him to walk out with a gun to his back.
Hmm.
Now, John going, what the hell? I was just sleeping in a shack. What did I do? At one point thought maybe he's getting robbed.
Yeah. I mean,
So, and he had a gun. So John, thinking he was being robbed, pulled his gun and ran behind a tree. Now the two are shooting at each other. This gas store owner and John are shooting at each other. Excuse me. Now police on horseback are like hearing about everything. Like, of course, word is getting out. Like, there's this gunfire. They think they got the guy that, killed Francis. They're in the woods.
okay.
Now police are coming on horseback with a loud crowd of the angry mob vigilante people.
Okay.
And now there's people with guns, pitchforks, just all kind of surrounding this one man,
Right.
who was already in a gunfight with the gas station owner. Now this vigilante comes out and they start shooting at John. Eventually, John does get hit on his side. So John stumbled his way out into the middle of the crowd, got down on his knees and yelled to everybody that he's just a farmer from Pennsylvania who got into a fight with his wife and he was staying in the shack to get away.
Mm-hmm.
He then took his gun and shot himself in the head.
Okay.
So it was later verified that what John was saying was true. He truly was a farmer and he was on his farm in Pennsylvania when the murder took place.
Okay. So they didn't try to say it was him in the end to close the case.
No, his story lined up.
Okay.
They realized they were going after the wrong guy and he lost his life out of it.
Okay.
So the gray man was never found by the police. He wasn't charged for Francis's murder until much, much later.
No.
So this is where we'll stop for today because our next episode, we're going to get into the next few murders that he did.
Okay.
And leading up to his arrest.
Okay. And we'll get some more pictures and we will recap with a little bit of a few things.
But I'm glad we
those
got to
pictures.
talk about, his early life, what could have caused some of the behaviors that he had. He just had a perfect storm, if not a perfect tornado of craziness that happened. I mean, he had environmental factors. He had family generation factors.
Yep.
Because there was mental illness in the family.
Oh, yeah.
We do want to even think about the fact that his parents had him at later ages.
Yeah.
Dad was 75 years old. He lived without a father, without that father influence.
Okay.
And was not necessarily taken from his mother, but he could have seen it as a child as abandoned by his mother.
Yeah, he could have. Very so much. Yeah.
So we have a lot to kind of digest there. And I sort of want to take a little bit of a break because the next one is going to be kind of hard to talk about. Again, realize that there's trigger warnings and our child deaths that we're going to be discussing in the next episode. Mm-hmm. And it's going to get pretty gruesome. And there's a letter that Albert wrote, and I fiddled with if I should read it or not, but I'm going to. I think we should talk about it. Okay. So just know ahead of time
we could make that a short even.
I'll be part of the episodes. Okay. Yeah. Definitely important. I mean, most people know Albert Fish was caught because of the murder of Grace Budd, but I did want to give Francis McDonnell and the next child that we're going to talk about, I wanted to give them some sort of voice because they're less known about mainly because he was just never caught for it
Hmm.
until much later.
Okay.
And so it's pretty interesting that, or I think it's important that we talk about
Hmm.
them, including the nameless victims that he had from all over the place.
Right.
The people that he just lured into places and may have tortured, killed, or even just even molesting.
Hmm.
May not have been torturing or killing, but that is something that you can live with for life.
Okay.
So,
Well, before we go, be
yes.
sure to join us starting May for season 3.
Mm-hmm.
That'll go through May through July.
Yep.
We're gonna do some fun things, I think.
Yeah,
Um, we're gonna do some more fun facts of dying.
of course.
Um, we've got some more creeps and cocktails. Some interesting ones such as Ted Bundy.
Yeah, we're going to cover Ted Bundy, Ed Kemper, Son
For
of Sam.
um, we are going to dive into what are spirit animals.
Yes, we are.
Um, we're gonna talk about Lake Superior and some activities on Lake Superior and some ghost ships.
Nice.
Um, we might dabble into how tarot works, um,
Or at least the history of it.
the history of it, and kind of what some of the bigger cards represent,
Yeah,
and maybe
absolutely.
and basically an outline of what are the layouts and
Hmm.
um, we're gonna dive into some Black River Falls,
Yeah,
Wisconsin.
we went there. We definitely
Yeah.
got to talk about it.
Um, and there will be some bonus ones in there that might be interesting as well. And then in August, we're going to talk about the Michigan Triangle and do another kind of special on that.
Okay,
Um,
that's going to be your thing.
yep, that's a 3-parter. And that's going to go from for the Michigan Triangle. That's actually, for those who don't know, it's on Lake Michigan. And there's UFO, there's um, ghost, or there's ship issues, and it's in a certain little triangle. And then
Hmm.
there's planes that have disappeared too. So we're going to cover um, each topic
Yeah,
per
that'd be
se.
fun.
So that's some stuff to look forward to.
Hmm.
Um, thank you for joining us, and look
Don't forget your
forward.
Ricky next time.
Yep,
Join us next time and make yourself a Ricky.
and if you like this, make sure to subscribe, and you will be notified when there's a new episode. And we're estimating this will be about a 3-part series.
Maybe
So
4, but I'm going to try to keep it a 3.
I don't have release times on any of these. This is kind of just something we're doing this
Yeah,
month. So when they do come out, we will update you on Facebook. And
we'll
but
try
if
not
you
to keep it too long in between
right,
parts. Yeah.
and if you do subscribe, you'll see when they do come out.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Come back for part 2 of
yep.
Elderfish.